Number 10. Civil War I. Oh boy, the first Civil War caused a great uproar and a good deal of problems in the superhero community. It also made Earth vulnerable to attack, as it evidently involved just infighting. When superheroes turn on each other, that's bad. When two main superheroes who are part of the same team turn on each other, that's ridiculous. And that's exactly what happened with Civil War I. While the inciting incident that divided heroes wasn't caused by Iron Man or Captain America, and actually was pretty serious, they both had become leaders of two different approaches for how to best resolve that main issue. Iron Man believed that superhuman beings needed a shorter and tighter leash basically, and should work with the government so they could kind of be overseen. Number 9. Axis. Axis was an event where we saw heroes and villains sort of do kind of like a role reversal. This happened as a result of a spell backfiring, cast by, well, you probably guessed it, none other than Scarlet Witch. Wanda, for being a powerful magic user, has kind of a challenging time with magic. Although, to be fair, she actually wasn't the only caster involved here, although she is the one that we often talk about. Doctor Strange started casting with her, and when he got taken out, Doctor Doom actually helped in his stead. So Doom is also possibly to blame as well, even though Wanda usually takes a lot of the flack for this one. What launched the Axis event was Wanda and Doom attempting to cast a spell on the evolved and supremely powerful version of Red Skull, Red Onslaught, which sort of came about when Magneto was like, I know how to fix this, I'll kill you, and then Red Onslaught happened, so it didn't work out so great. The spell actually succeeded, but kind of backfired in that many other heroes and villains within a certain radius also got hit with the spell unintentionally. Oops. Number 8. Hydrocap. Hydrocap is definitely a pretty bad thing that happened for the Avengers in, well, in many regards. One, Hydra Captain America is literally another version of Captain America who for a while we actually thought was the main continuity version for real, so we're not off to a great start with that. Number 2, the Avengers failed to stop Hydra's Supreme Cap from taking over the US. Number 3, some of the Avengers were even manipulated into joining Hydra and Hydra Cap's forces. Some of them were actually like possessed, and some of them were just kind of made to do so. All around, it was just a rough time and not a great look for the Avengers overall. I'm actually surprised there isn't more pushback from the public today as a result of this one. Number 7, Iron Man joins Kang. Yeesh, the crossing. What a weird crossover event. Every time I think I'm over it, we come up with a list topic where I kind of can't help but like return to it. In this event, Iron Man, one of the main Avengers, was revealed to be secretly one of the baddest of the bad, as we learned that Iron Man had actually been working for Kang, or rather Kang's Immortus version, for years. That's right, it turns out that Iron Man is actually a sleeper agent for Kang, or he was. He kind of still is, because he kind of got reconciled into one being, but it's still the old Iron Man. Anyways, as weird as it sounds, this was actually an even worse weirdness than Captain America working for Hydra in my mind. At least that made more sense to me. Iron Man would fight against the Avengers, and when they struggled to defeat him, they called in a past version of himself for him to beat and almost kill. Number 6, Final Fight. When the Earth was threatened by incursions during the events of Time Runs Out, what did the Avengers do? Save the day? Try to stop those incursions? Not exactly. Captain America had once been a member of the Illuminati, the secret group of heroes who banded together to resolve ideally all of Earth's problems without anyone actually even knowing. A group of superpowered intellectual, philosophical, and moral geniuses. At least, that's what they thought. When the incursions were discovered to be a threat, and the majority of the group felt that it was important to consider the possibility that they'd maybe need to destroy other worlds to sort of save themselves from it, Captain America fought vehemently against that idea. As such, his mind was wiped, and he was decidedly ejected from the group. When he regained his memories, rather than use the Avengers to fight against the incursions and find a way to stop them, he actually spent the last bit of time before the multiverse was to end hunting down the Illuminati and in a toe-to-toe battle with Iron Man. Number 5, create the Illuminati. Sometimes it only takes one Avenger to mess up everything for all of us. And that's kind of what happened when Tony Stark, aka Iron Man of the Avengers, decided to bring together the secret superhero group known as the Illuminati. Like I said, this wasn't the combined effort of the Avengers, but when you think about the Avengers now and even before, Tony has been a staple of that team for a very long time. And the Illuminati was really his genius idea. His genius idea. The Illuminati as a group have definitely caused more trouble than they're worth, causing a lot more problems in the cosmos than they've actually solved. Playing a key role in the end of the multiverse during Time Runs Out when they couldn't save the world, helping to cause Secret Invasion and World War Hulk as well. So yeah. Number 4, Civil War II. Even worse by far than Civil War I was its follow-up, Civil War II. In this story, we got more infighting, but for less logical reasons. This time it was Iron Man versus Captain Marvel, because I guess Iron Man just really needs to like duke it out with all the captains. This one is one we can also likely more blame on the behind the scenes, as Marvel was definitely aiming to capitalize on Civil War I's success with this follow-up, but it just didn't work out too well because Civil War II didn't really make a lot of sense for most readers. But in terms of the canon, Carol, I think, was hands down to blame here for just being, well, unreasonably aggressive on the matter that was up for debate. Whether or not to let Inhuman Ulysses, a precog, predict the future and then based on those predictions stop future criminals from committing future crimes before of course they even happen. Yeah, and I say that as a Captain Marvel fan. I'm a big Carol Danvers fan, but this one was pretty one-sided in my mind. Even I am like, I think Carol was wrong and Tony was right. And I don't say that very often. Number 3. Avengers Disassembled. Avengers Disassembled was a story arc where the Avengers essentially imploded. What had really happened was Wanda had learned of the secret being kept from her, that she'd had fake children, which she'd in essence kinda made, who had been taken from her and then wiped from her mind by Agatha Harkness. Now, Wanda didn't like that too much, and in essence turned against Agatha, killing her before turning on her friends and colleagues, causing them to lose control, attack one another, and sicking reality-warped versions basically of like Vision and Dead Avengers on them. Not only did the Avengers hurt one another, but they were made to do so by one of their own, and likely were even somewhat responsible for Wanda getting to a point where she decided to turn on them. So really, who's to blame here? Is it Wanda or is it the Avengers? Or is it kind of everybody? Number 2. Ignoring Scarlet Witch. Avengers Disassembled was bad, but likely what was worse was that it kind of could all have been avoided if the rest of the team had simply, I don't know, cared more about their teammate and friend, Wanda. Scarlet Witch had a lot happen to her, and although this is of course superhero comics where every day that you're alive there's a threat of trauma or, you know, of the world ending, or both, there had been many signs that Wanda was not in a good place. Rather than do something about it or, you know, attempt to, I don't know, get her help, mainly the Avengers just went on as though everything was fine. I mean, I know they all each have a lot individually going on, but come on guys. If you have someone with reality warping powers on your team and they are using those powers to create fake children which then disappear without a trace after they also lose their life partner thanks to them basically being taken apart, mind wiped, and rebuilt as a blank slate without emotion, you might think to offer them some help or, you know, at least check in to see like if they need anything, if they need a hug or a conversation. I'm not blaming them for what Wanda did, but I would at least like to hold them accountable for being pretty much awful friends to her in her time of need. Number 1. No more mutants. Probably one of the worst things that at least one of the Avengers did was to threaten all of the mutant kind's existence with just, you know, a few words. Although admittedly, this wasn't so much Wanda's fault as it was Marvel's, who of course needed some reason to get rid of mutants for a bit because, you know, they'd sold the rights away and they weren't really profiting as much from comics involving mutants at that time, and they simply had too many of them. But reasoning behind the story aside, during House of M, Wanda in the end struck out at all mutants because her father, she felt, was more obsessed with fighting for mutant rights than he was with his actual own flesh and blood family. Although we'd later learn that Scarlet Witch and her brother Quicksilver weren't even really like flesh and blood family. To begin with, part of the reason that Wanda suffered the mental break, which caused House of M and later M Day, had to do with the fact that her friends and Avengers didn't seem to notice or perhaps care that Wanda was suffering as a result of losing her children. And in fact, let us not forget that Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, of the Avengers, was also the one who even kinda like caused Wanda to remember her kids to begin with. She kinda spilled those beans. So whose fault was M Day really in the end? It was still Wanda's. Wanda was the one that said the words, so it's still her fault. But Janet was there. Number 10. Iron Man almost kills Tony Stark. Iron Man is really good at making suits, sometimes too good. At one point he decided to make an AI suit instead of an AI to be used in his suit. This artificially intelligent suit did what most artificial robotic intelligences do. It almost immediately became evil. Although Tony did also decide to use some Ultron code to construct it, which honestly probably was not such a good idea, especially for someone who's supposed to be a computer genius. In the end, the suit created programming that allowed it to feel emotions, and after fighting with Tony Stark and trying to get him to forcibly merge with itself, it eventually felt remorse at its action while during their fight, Stark suffered a heart attack. The suit sacrificed its own life, giving Stark an emergency and what looks like terrifying artificial heart transplant. Like, you can still see the artificial heart sticking out of Tony's chest. That does not look sanitary to me. Number 9. The Avengers kill Iron Man. Okay, so the Avengers weren't solely responsible for his death this time around, but they definitely were the ones who caused it to happen. At least in part. During the events of Armor Wars, Iron Man became branded a criminal by the United States government. Among those opposing the vigilante were fellow Avenger Captain America. This, however, happened at a time where Tony Stark was not known to be Iron Man. His identity remained a secret, and Stark simply claimed that the man in the suit was actually his bodyguard, often remote controlling the suit to kind of make it appear as though they were in the same place at the same time, so no one would question his explanation of the identity for Iron Man. In the end, Stark decided, because of being declared an outlaw, to kill Iron Man, claiming that the man in the suit was named Randall Pierce, and staging Pierce's death by allowing an empty remote-controlled piloted suit to be destroyed during a confrontation with the government. This would later allow Tony to reveal himself as Iron Man, though he would at first claim another employee of his had simply taken up the mantle. But we knew the truth. It was really Tony in that suit. Once again. Number 8. Zombie Hulk kills Zombie Iron Man. During the events of Marvel Zombies, pretty much almost all of the zombified heroes meet their end at one point or another, save for a lucky, or I guess unlucky, few. Iron Man is not one of the zombified heroes who makes it, however. He is one of the victims of Zombie Hulk, who kills a bunch of other zombies when they start getting angry with him for eating so much, as they fear their food supply of brains and meat is running low. Zombie Hulk crushes Zombie Iron Man to the point that blood sprays out of his mouth and eye holes of his armor. Basically, he squishes him like a grape. Number 7. Tony Stark sacrifices Tony Stark. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was Tony himself who killed Tony, or while he chose to sacrifice himself in order to ensure the events of Thanos' snap at the end of Infinity War, which initially wiped out 50% of all living beings at random, including half the population on planet Earth, remained reversed, so unsnapped if you will. In order to bring everyone back, the heroes needed to time travel to retrieve the Infinity Stones and use them to create their own Infinity Stone Gauntlet. Then the question came of, who was going to wield it. The Hulk was the one to bring back everyone using the gauntlet, but Thanos from the past returned to threaten the heroic plans of the Avengers. He attempted to guarantee that his future self's plot, and really his own plot, remained successful, but Tony managed to get rid of him, wielding the gauntlet himself and using it to wipe out Thanos and his army with his own snap. Unfortunately, because Tony Stark is just a man at the end of the day, the amount of energy this required ended up killing him, despite him wearing his Iron Man armor at the time. Number 6. Dark Avengers kill Tony Stark's evil brain. In issue 190 of the Dark Avengers, we get a glimpse into the pocket reality of Earth 13584, where New York is one of the last vestiges of human civilization that various superhero factions fight for power over. One such faction is led by an evil Iron Man who is now just a brain. His armor was crushed by a giant Janet Van Dyne of the same pocket dimension reality. As his brain ejected from the armor, Trickshot of the Dark Avengers, Barney Barton, Clint's brother, shot the brain with an arrow, killing this alternate version of Tony Stark. Number 5. Captain America kills Steel Corpse. In an alternate reality belonging to Age of X, Tony Stark became consumed by a virus which fused him with his suit, causing him to slowly be digested by it. Ew. Formerly known as Iron Man, Tony adopted the mantle of Steel Corpse following this, which he thought was more appropriate considering, he was basically just a corpse in an armor. He joined the Avengers team in their mission to exterminate mutants, but when they decided to rebel against their mission directive, saving mutants instead, an emergency override system caused Stark to be unable to follow suit with the rest of his teammates. Stark told Captain America to save the mutants they were targeting, which he knew meant that Cap would be forced to kill him. Number 4. Captain Marvel kills Tony Stark. During the events of Civil War II, we saw Tony Stark's Iron Man and Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel butt heads over what the best decision would be when it came to using or not using the Inhuman Ulysses' future vision. This all happened after Carol had been attempting to fight Thanos, whom Ulysses had predicted would return, and during the fight Rhodey, aka War Machine, was killed. Carol was for using Ulysses' visions to prevent possible catastrophic events, whereas Tony was against punishing or arresting people based solely on Ulysses' visions, which he thought might be flawed. The Civil War ended with Carol seemingly killing Tony, though it was later revealed he was still alive but in a coma, and then of course later on he woke back up and he would actually even come to forgive Captain Marvel. And now they don't really talk about the fact that that all happened. Number 3. Steve Rogers kills Superior Iron Man. During the events of Time Runs Out, as a final incursion threatened the very existence of the entire planet and universe, Superior Iron Man and old Steve Rogers came to blows. They were fighting about the controversial actions of the once secret organization of brilliant minds known as the Illuminati. Also, Superior Iron Man is just kind of a jerk, so it makes sense that Captain America would be like, I'm gonna fight you, you're evil. Captain America had declared Iron Man and the Illuminati enemies due to their actions, and as such, the two heroes and former friends had come to blows over the argument. Just as the world was about to end, these two fought each other to death, both being taken out by a helicarrier during their fight in their last moments before everything reset. And then Battle World happened. Woo! Number 2. Young Tony Stark kills older Tony Stark. During the events of The Crossing, a wildly crazy story, it is revealed that Tony was a sleeper agent for Kang the Conqueror, who he later found out was actually a Mortis in disguise, posing as Kang. Evil older Tony kills tons of people before the Avengers attempt to stop him by bringing back a younger version of himself from the past who they hope can help to stop their Tony. This didn't quite work out as they planned, but in the end, older Tony and fake Kang were defeated when older Tony, inspired by younger Tony, decided to sacrifice himself, switching back to the side of the heroes right before he died. With older Tony dead, it was decided that younger Tony would stay in the future and take his place. Number 1. Tony Stark kills immoral Tony Stark. A crazy turn of events came about that led young Tony Stark to effectively make himself brain dead in the comics in the Invincible No More story. Following Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn created Hammer in the place of S.H.I.E.L.D. and created his own Avengers, which we know as the Dark Avengers, mainly comprised of villains who adopted heroic personas to mirror that of the original Avengers team. To prevent Osborn from getting a hold of information that was gathered from heroes during the events of the first Civil War as part of the Superhuman Registration Act, Stark transferred the files from S.H.I.E.L.D. computers to his own brain, and then later wiped his own mind completely, making him brain dead. Tony would later return, but not really as the same version of himself. This Tony Stark would not have the knowledge of his actions during the first Civil War. How convenient.
At number 10, we have Sandman. Although his redemption arc is really great and has so much potential, it sort of falls flat. Basically, the Thing one day sits Sandman down and tries to turn him to the good side, and it works. With Sandman now finding his stride as a hero, he first joins the Outlaws, a team of reformed Spider-Man enemies, and is then given a membership to the Avengers. It's all going in the right direction for the former villain until he's promptly hypnotized by Wizard and turned back to the dark side. Honestly, this isn't even Sandman's fault, but his quick turn back to evil gets in the way of him being anything close to a functional member of the Avengers. I almost didn't even put him on the list just because he barely even does anything for the team after he's inducted. And even tragically after that, he even goes off to reform the Sinister Six right after leaving the Avengers Reserve, which basically erases any good he may have done during his time as an Avenger. At number 9, we have Justice, FKA Marvel Boy. Although he's known as a pretty well-respected hero, at least in his later years, Justice still doesn't do much for the Avengers during his time with them. When he first joins, he comes off as more of a fan than anything else, making some rookie mistakes right off the bat. He also finds a way to break his leg, which isn't very common for a superhero. Much of his lack of maturity in the group is due to his worship for the other members of the Avengers, so it's hard to blame him, although he does do some pretty good work in planning to take down Ultron. Later, he ends up teaching for the Avengers Academy alongside Hank Pym, Tigra, Quicksilver, and Speedball. But overall, this character's time with the Avengers is wrought with scattered accomplishments and distracting love triangle storylines that just make him a much less effective member of the team. At number 8 is Sentry, who joins the Mighty Avengers after having one foot in the door of the New Avengers for a while. This guy is a poor addition to the team simply based on issues of power imbalance and, unfortunately, his own mental health. On the power side of things, he's so powerful that he sort of drowns out the efforts of the Avengers as a team, which in many ways is a good problem to have. But on top of this, due to his mental health issues, he tends to have trouble reining in his power set and often second guesses himself. I feel badly for the Sentry, and I only put him on this list because sometimes people just aren't right for a big team. When it becomes clear that Sentry is fighting some internal battles, he is still known as the most powerful member of the team, but just needs to figure himself out first. For example, at one point, Sentry attacks Ultron at a moment when the team needed him to hold back, and sort of ruins the whole plan. Although the attack was in retaliation for Ultron seemingly killing his wife, so it's not that unexpected. It's just one of the many times that Sentry has troubles keeping his composure and taking on the responsibilities of an Avenger. He's not a bad hero, just maybe not right for the best superhero alliance ever created. At number 7 we have US Agent, or John Walker, formerly a stand-in for Captain America. His true colors show when Steve Rogers returns and Walker is renamed US Agent, which is just a bunko name if you ask me. I had to put him on the list even though he does the honorable deed of taking over as Captain America when Steve Rogers goes AWOL and becomes Nomad. He's just a little too intense on the patriotism front and brings the team down as a result. A huge part of Steve Rogers' influence on the Avengers is his ability to shelve the burden of America's unofficial but basically official superhero and keep his intentions focused on acting in favor of others. He's able to put aside his pride and work for the team, whereas Walker does the opposite. He does work for the team, but it's a big lesson in the importance of good attitude because they have the same powers, but something about John Walker's suffocating patriotism and inherent arrogance that comes with it just proves that no one could do the job like Steve could. And once again, US Agent is just such a lame name to take on, unrelated. Especially after having gone as Captain America for a time, it's just, maybe I just feel badly for him in a way. At number 6 we have Swordsman. With the biggest accolade being that he trains Hawkeye, it's hard not to squeeze this guy onto the list. Basically, Swordsman starts off as a circus performer who is known for demonstrating his mastery with bladed weaponry. He was more of a showman than a superhero realistically, and also more of a villain than a superhero if we're being honest. After losing all his money due to his gambling addiction, he decides to steal from the carnival paymaster, and when a young Hawkeye chases him, Swordsman almost kills his own apprentice. And then, fast forwarding, the way that he's eventually admitted into the Avengers is basically through fraud. He teams up with Mandarin and sends a fake message posing as Iron Man to the Avengers to allow himself into the group. And it works. Being a double agent for Mandarin, he later lures the Avengers into a bomb with the intention of blowing them up. Although he does try to dismantle it in a moment of regret, he's still dejected from the Avengers anyway. I think they just sensed he was screwing around with them. He then basically just falls back into a life of crime while picking up a drinking habit along the way, which isn't part of the reason I put him on the list. This is kind of sad. He's a very troubled character and just had some nasty intentions and tendencies. Not the most noble of the Avengers by any means. At number 5 we have Jack of Hearts. This guy is notoriously one of the worst Avengers because his most notable act as part of the team is murdering another one of the members. Although he does this while under the influence of Scarlet Witch, there's no hiding from something so brutal. I mean, the Avenger he kills is Ant-Man, who's a really important member of the team. Aside from this though, Jack of Hearts also just spends such a short time with the Avengers that even his heroic deeds are sort of weak, regardless of the tragedy. Being the 52nd member of the Avengers, he's brought on specifically to help take on Kang the Conqueror. They all team up with the Justice League and a huge battle goes down. And then promptly after this, Jack tragically decides he needs to end his own life for various reasons, taking a villain with him who had killed Ant-Man's daughter. But it's pretty ironic that the next time he makes an appearance, he blows himself up and takes Ant-Man with him. Just a messy run as an Avenger through and through. At number 4 we have Stingray. This guy isn't ever really a true member of the Avengers. He is officially, but he only seems to jump on as part of the group when they need him, like when they need access to his underwater hydro base or when an inverted Doctor Doom brings him on to rescue civilians from a river. He's sort of their fringe friend that they use for water related issues. Could this be a case of lazy writing? Perhaps. But it seems more like he's not really a strong enough character to do much more than pop in and out of the scene when water gets involved. He also almost fights Iron Man due to a misunderstanding right when he joins the team, and even campaigns to have him removed from the Avengers, which is just an awful way to start. At number 3 is Star Fox. This guy is just a bad hero. He's not even really a hero. His powers are extremely problematic in that he can basically gain the love of a woman on command. But it's not really love because it's artificial and it only lasts for so long. So when he uses his powers, these women often wake up not knowing where they are or what they've done, which is naturally a pretty deplorable thing to inflict on a person with your powers. And he doesn't even seem to feel badly after it either. He just gets his clothes on and jumps out the window like, See you later, good luck piecing together the last 12 hours. Otherwise known as Eros of Titan, this guy is actually Thanos' older brother, so this sort of explains the evil nature of his powers. At least in the comics they're kind of aware of his nasty nature, because the woman who he's used his powers on eventually come out and sue him because of what he does, which has to be a first for a superhero. I'm honestly just surprised that this dude even had a membership to the Avengers in the first place. He just kind of sucks. At number 2 is D-Man, or Demolition Man. This dude should never really have been brought on to join the Avengers. He's sort of just this unmotivated, scraggly guy with a horribly designed suit. He just steals Wolverine's and Daredevil's costumes and makes a tragic mashup of the two. His origins are that he's basically a wrestler that was given superhuman strength before befriending Captain America. When Cap needs to reform the Avengers, he thinks it's a good idea to bring on D-Man to join the team. But this choice is pretty obviously out of sympathy for the guy, because he doesn't really do much when he does join. He's then sort of left behind and lost in time, becoming more and more unmotivated as the years go on, eventually living in homelessness before becoming a sort of villain. Not the best track record for even an alum of the Avengers. But I can't totally rag on him. The Avengers have insanely high standards, and some people just want to hang out and eat sub sandwiches. So that's D-Man. The number 1 spot on this list goes to Dr. Druid. Having been trained under the same mentor who trained Doctor Strange, you'd think this guy would have gone on to be a great member of the Avengers. Well, at first he wasn't actually known as such a bad hero by his own right, but after joining the team, it becomes pretty obvious that he wasn't destined for greatness. His attitude is arrogant, he carries a lot of insecurity about living in Strange's shadow for so long, and he also has a big weakness to the charm of women, proving him to have a pretty low emotional intelligence. And this is a pretty major fault when you're supposed to be an Avenger, because you need to be able to have a strong character regardless of whatever your power set is. This also tends to lead him to be a subordinate to women in positions of power, like Captain Marvel, who he continually undermines until his disloyalty leads to her being seriously injured in battle. He then tries to convince everyone to name him the successor as the new chairman. This guy, Dr. Druid, was just kind of a weak-minded fool who was conniving and subordinate through and through. It's surprising he was ever brought on board with the Avengers, because he really proves himself to be one of their weakest links while he's there.
Number 10. Age of X Avengers. In the Age of X storyline, the mutant population were feared, and after a phoenix-shaped explosion leveled Albany, the culling of the mutants began. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal several buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle, and led by Captain America, to hunt down this resistance of mutants. The team was made up of Captain America, Ghost Rider, who was killed prior to the actual assault on Fortress X, the Hulk, Invisible Woman, Redback, who is this universe's Jessica Drew, and Iron Man / Steel Corps. While the team murdered a lot of mutants, Cap eventually called them off to instead defend the mutants, which activated Steel Corps' Code Omega, causing them to take him out. There was also Plan B, which was the 2 megaton chemical that was carried by the Hulk. Luckily, the mutant population survived this twisted Avenger team.
Number 9. Ultimate Avengers. Not to be confused with the Ultimates, who are very much their own thing. This team of Avengers is actually called the Avengers, but is not the Avengers equivalent from the 1610 Ultimate Universe. Are you confused yet? Basically, in the Ultimate Universe, the Avengers team that we know and love from 616 is a little different, including in name. On Earth 1610, the Earth's mightiest heroes go by the name of the Ultimates, and are pretty buddy-buddy with S.H.I.E.L.D. and its director Nick Fury. However, there is a team in this universe that uses the Avengers moniker, but they are quite different from the Avengers we know from Earth 616. On 1610, the Avengers team is more like DC's Suicide Squad. The team is made up of characters who are seen as more disposable by S.H.I.E.L.D. and who are more anti-heroes or just straight up villains. They are a black ops team who is usually brought on for less publicly marketable missions and jobs.
Number 8. Deathlock Nation. On Earth 11045, the superhumans grew out of control. They began to take the law into their own hands, more and more, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. This led to popular support from the people for Operation Deathlock. Operation Deathlock was a plan conceived by Weapon Infinity of the Weapons Plus breeding facility, called the world, to convert all superhumans into Deathlocks. The project began small, with a few normal human Deathlocks, and then those Deathlocks targeted specific heroes who were killed and then converted into super Deathlocks. No hero could stand for long, and soon, all superheroes were converted into mindless police robots, which actually resulted in a utopia. Eventually, these Deathlocks began spreading into other timelines and realities, only to be stopped by Apocalypse. This eventually led a team composed of Deathlock, Captain America, Cyclops, Spider-Man, Elektra, Hawkeye, and the Thing to come into conflict with Earth 616.
Number 7. Cadaverous Avengers. Cadaverous Avengers were part machine, part man, and all influenced by the villainous Cadaverous. They show up in whatever alternate world J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams' Spider-Man series is relegated to. I don't think it has an official number yet. It does have a temporary reality number though. This team seemed hell-bent on getting revenge on Iron Man, the only surviving Avenger left in this world. Well, I guess Peter was still alive at this point, and I mean, he's normally a part of the Avengers team, at least at some point, but I mean, in terms of the standard Avengers cast, we've all come to familiarize ourselves with through various forms of media, including the films. I mean, especially the films in this case, just based on the roster. These villainous corpse versions of the former heroes face off against the old Iron Man, Ironheart, Spider-Man's son Ben Parker, and his powerless but enthusiastic friend and love interest, Faye Ito. Or is it Ito Faye? Needless to say, these evil counterparts at least weren't in control of themselves, but instead were being influenced by Cadaverous to fight against their former friend and colleague with the use of old Stark Tech neurochips.
Number 6. The Gatherers. The Gatherers are a team of former Avengers of different alternate realities who survived their world's destruction, tricked by an alternate reality Black Knight named Proctor into believing that their world's Circes were to blame. Proctor united them together and gave them a single enemy, the Circe of Earth 616. The team consisted of alternate reality versions of Proctor, Rick Jones, the Thing or Korg, Swordsman, Black Panther, and the Vision, as well as some unknown original villains. But for them to carry out their vengeance, each member had to kill their Earth 616 counterpart within a certain amount of time, or they would die from cellular breakdown. What the members of the Gatherers did not know is that their leader, Proctor, was responsible for the destruction of each world they are from, as he drove that world's Circe into madness, causing her to lash out and destroy everything around her, all because of a bad breakup. Damn, dude!
Number 5. Android Ultimates. The Android Ultimates come from Ultimates 3. They make their first appearance in issue number 4 of the Ultimates 3 series. This is where we first learn that these Ultimates aren't really the Ultimates at all, but replacements built by Ultron to act just like them. His plan is to use the team of robotic hero impersonators to destroy man and help the machines of the world rise up. Really all machines too. There's a weird part where they're talking about like, we as machines are just seen as these tools. Us toasters, we will unite. It's like very strange. Of course, the Ultimates themselves will have a few things to say about that whole plan. Ultron styles himself after his father Ant-Man, but he and his team wouldn't make it past the next issue. It would later be revealed that their leader Ultron wasn't actually fully in control, but instead was being puppeted by Doctor Doom. So many reveals where people are actually being controlled by someone else.
Number 4. Undead Avengers. The living are not welcome on Earth 666, and the world is only consisting purely of the dead, undead, or supernatural beings. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, and more all exist here, and each group is divided into separate factions. But don't fear, the greatest heroes from across these groups are assembled together to protect this world. They are the Undead Avengers. This team is so cool. A Captain America who never recovered from being a werewolf, a part spider Natasha Romanoff, a devil Daredevil, a mummified Thor the Accursed who wields the backwards Mjolnir that casts black anti-magic energy, Vampire Wolverine, Hawkeye, Franken Castle? I mean, come on. These guys come into conflict with Captain Britain when trying to defend the Orb of Necromancy in order for them to spread undeath across all of reality, and they first appear in Secret Avengers number 33.
Number 3. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers technically hail from Earth 616, but they are a completely alternate team when it comes to their roster and in general their backstory and motives. Well, that is, In a way, the Dark Avengers do attempt to do good, but they are just all approaching it from a more villainous side. And many of the team members don't do good for the sake of doing good, but have their own ulterior motives. So can we really call that good? That's a philosophical question for you. The Dark Avengers were introduced when Norman Osborn was given reign over the heroic team after he'd been declared a hero for killing the Skrull Queen Veronki. Aside from getting to build his own Avengers team, which would replace the previous one, S.H.I.E.L.D. had been disbanded and Osborn was allowed to create his own organization to replace it, using the acronym HAMMER, which really doesn't stand for anything. Osborn just thought it sounded cool, so that's not really an acronym, it's just capitalized letters at that point. He pulled together his own Avengers team, which publication-wise became known as the Dark Avengers, composed of various Marvel villains, anti-heroes, and misled heroes in some cases, or heroes who were just like really lost at the time, who Osborn united when the standard Avengers hero members refused to join his team. He did try though. He was like, hey Carol, come be on this team. She was like, hell no.
Number 2. Zombie Galacti. I think most of us are familiar with Earth 2149, which is the home of the Marvel Zombie storyline. Here, a separate reality zombie-infected Sentry was sent by his Earth's Watcher. The Avengers were the first on the scene and quickly died or were infected, with the rest of the population falling quickly afterwards. Once the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, showed up to announce the arrival of Galactus, he was consumed by Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Giant Man, Power Man, and Captain America, who absorbed his powers and used it to toast other zombies to improve their flavor. Gordon Ramsay would not approve. The zombie Galacti used the machine to unite their power cosmic to take down Galactus, and after fighting their zombie villains, consumed and absorbed his power too, using it to spread the infection throughout the whole of their universe.
Number 1. Revengers. The Cancerverse Avengers, known as the Revengers, hail from a reality where the world was turned upside down by the fact that Death was defeated. I know, how can you kill Death? Well, apparently when you make deals with elder god-like beings, anything is possible, like what happened here. In a bid to save Captain Marvel from life-threatening cancer, a deal was struck with the many-angled ones. As a result, Death ended up dead, which actually resulted in the whole universe becoming a perverted version of itself. You'd think without Death around, the universe would become like a paradise. But no. It became rank with disease that spread and basically couldn't die, becoming known as the Cancerverse. All the heroes who remained here were made to serve the many-angled ones, becoming their loyal servants and attempting to invade other universes eventually and conquer them in the name of their Lovecraftian horror-esque gods, Avengers included. Or Revengers included.